There's no doubt that the S2000 is an incredible driver's car, but it does have some flaws. I'm going to tell you about the top 5 flaws with the Honda S2000. To be honest, these are all pretty nitpicky flaws. I love the S2000. I'm pretty biased and truly believe it's one of the best driver's cars, but there are definitely some things that I wish were a little bit different. I'm gonna go into each and every one of those. The very first gripe, the first flaw, is that this car isn't that loud. It actually doesn't sound incredibly good from the factory. It has a very limited exhaust. It kind of restricts and retains all of that sound within the exhaust, within the muffler. So a lot of the sound that you hear is actually from the intake. You don't get too much exhaust noise. Yes, when you're very high up in the RPMs, it sounds okay, but this car doesn't really have that sort of magical symphony of sound that you get from a really exotic car. It doesn't have that V8 growl. It doesn't have, a Ferrari sound, anything like that. I've gone ahead and turned on the car, just listen to a couple of revs. It sounds okay, but it definitely doesn't sound amazing. Okay, let's do a little sound check. You can see the car is warm and ready. If I go ahead and give it a rev, you can tell me what you think in the comments down below, but I'm marking this up to a flaw. I don't think it sounds as good as it could. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. I think it's a bit of a flaw. I think it could have been a little bit better of a sound. Probably one of the most important flaws of this car is number 2. It's the power. Now don't get me wrong, this thing is a ton of fun on a back road, but ultimately it leaves you wanting a little bit more horsepower. It has around 240 horsepower, 180 pound-feet of torque, and while that is fun to have a good time on the twisties, it leaves you wanting more. I'm gonna turn the camera around because specifically the low-end torque is just lacking. This car does such a great job when you're up high in the RPM range, but when you're down low, 2,000 or 3,000 RPM and you step on it, it does not have a lot of. I really think that is one of the major flaws. This car could have had a better torque curve to give it a little bit more push when you're down low in the RPMs. I'm gonna go ahead and turn the camera around and I'll floor it from 3rd gear, 2,000 RPM, and you can see just how little it actually gets up and goes. 3rd gear, 2,500 RPM, foot to the floor, let's see how it goes. Okay, so it's not a slouch. It's not a slouch, but come on, from a low end, when you're just going from 0 to 10 miles an hour, it leaves you a little bit to be desired. I'm not gonna say it's really slow, but it's definitely not quick when you're going from stop sign or street lights. Again, 1st gear, it just doesn't have that torque of some cars. When it's down low, 2,000 RPM, foot to the floor, it's a great car, but trust me, it leaves a little bit to be desired. The 3rd flaw is great because there's a very easy fix, but it's sort of a sign of the times. When this car came out, aux cords weren't really used, so you could really only play CDs or the radio, nothing else. So when you get a stock S2000, you really are limited to those 2 options. Luckily, there is an immediate fix for this flaw. It's about $100 kit that you can get, and you can actually integrate an aux cord into the back. You do have to do some work. You have to take this out. You have to plug in the aux cord from the back and do a little bit of, some work there, but ultimately it can be fixed pretty easily. Of course, this car is almost, over 20 years old, so it is just a sign of the times. It's one little flaw. Luckily, it's very easy to fix. The 4th flaw is very nitpicky. This car is a driver's car. Of course, you can just have a water bottle on the seat or in the passenger footwell, but this is all you get for cup holders. And you have this kind of interesting thing right here that's supposed to divide the cups right there, but there's 2 critical flaws with this. First of which, those are just tiny little spaces. You can see if I put in my water bottle, it barely even fits. So if I put this down, you can kind of shove a water bottle in there. It's just too small, but the larger flaw is, because this is a manual transmission, how am I supposed to shift? When I go from first to second, am I supposed to shift like this over the water bottle? Your arm totally hits. It's very awkward. And ultimately, for a manual transmission to have the cup holders right there, it's just sort of a recipe for disaster. Your arm's going to be hitting it all the time, and it's really annoying. It's kind of led me just to kind of put the water bottle either on the passenger footwell or the passenger seat. Not a huge issue, but come on, it's definitely a flaw for this kind of design. You're going to be needing your arm right where the cups would be. Come on, Honda. You could have done a little better with this. This next flaw, in my opinion, is the most valid critique of this car. I'm a tall guy, I'm 6'2", and while I do fit in the S2000, I wish the seating position was a little bit lower. In a sports car, you want to be down low to the ground, you want to have a low center of gravity, and you can see the seat right here. While it's not super high up, when you're actually sitting in the car, it feels like you're more sitting on top of it instead of within the tub of the car. You can see here that the seat rails actually come up a bit, comes up off the floor, and it's just this little thing that could be better. I think if you're maybe an inch or 2 inches down, it would be a much better driving position. If I go ahead and I step in the car, this is about my eye line. So it's not bad, but again, if I was just an inch lower, something like that, it definitely would give a much better feel, and it would be, a bit better driving experience to have the weight down lower and ultimately give me a more in the car feel instead of on the car. There are some things that you can actually do to lower this about an inch. Of course, I could put in an aftermarket seat, or I could get a kit that lowers all of the seat rails by about an inch, but that kit is almost $500 and takes 3 or 4 hours of time to take the entire seat out, put in a new seat rail just for an extra little inch. Why couldn't it come like that from the factory? I wish it came a little bit lower. For me, my headroom is fine. I'm 6'2", and I can fit with the top up, the top down. It's okay, but the wind just barely kind of hits the top of my head. If I was an extra inch down, it truly would make a difference. So I think this is one of the most valid gripes, and while it's not a huge deal, it is a little bit of a flaw for a sports car. I'd be lying if I said the S2000 wasn't one of my favorite cars of all time. It really is. I think it's such a great combination of usable and also fun and exciting just to drive around a twisty road and really get the most out of it. But the car definitely does have some flaws. Those are the top 5 flaws in my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments below. This car is so great, but come on, Honda. Why didn't you fix those little flaws from the factory? Thank you so much for watching. Many more Honda and other fun videos coming.